All right. Hello, everybody. Fantastic to see you. Hello. I love that. Nice, energetic.
Okay.
Good morning going on. I love that. Okay, but in some areas, I know it's not really morning as much as it is here. Hey, there's Jim. Look at Jim. He's even unmiked. He's ready.
Good
He's
morning.
actually our speaker next week. Awesome. Can't wait to hear from him. Okay, we're going to let a few more people in. And anybody have any amazing stories to share with us this week? Because we are all about networking and we want to hear what's happening, right? Anybody want to share what they've been up to? Not yet. All right, go ahead. I know Jim is just busting at the seams, but he's going to hold on to it till next week.
Oh,
Yep,
Jim,
yep,
Oh,
yep.
hey, how about a teaser? Do you got a teaser for us?
Okay, so yeah, I got one little teaser about an interaction with a law enforcement officer.
Ooh,
So while on a job, someone called complaint. A sheriff came out, and I had just as he got there, I landed. So I had a great 15 minutes discussion with him, and let's just say it was 100% positive. He vacated and went to the complainant and had a couple minutes with that person. It all worked out, but it's just a day in the life.
just a day in the life. All right. Well, there's our little tidbit for what we can expect to hear more about next week when
Yeah.
Jim is on here. Also, Sheila will be moderating next week. So we want a big shout out for her. Thank you. Um, and we are all about networking. So I want to give it a quick minute. We want to meet and greet. Take this opportunity, put your information into the chat, connect with others. Do you realize this is global? We have people all across the United States and beyond. And so this is an absolutely excellent way to network with others and share. Wow, I see Kim Players. I have not seen Kim Players forever. So quick tidbit. Kim and I started this coffee connection back in what was it, 2020, I think, 20?
We started it during right when COVID started so that we could keep in touch with all our drone peeps
Yes.
way
Wow.
back in the day.
Good to see you, Kim. Awesome.
Good to see everybody. Ready to learn some new stuff. Hi, Jim.
Yes. We're
Hi,
excited to
Sharon.
have her here. All right. So
and
put your contact information into the chat because we want to make sure that we've connected and networked with everyone. And with that, I am actually going to segue over to our spotlight speaker for today. We have Dr. Kim Baldwin with us, and she is going to be sharing about her journey from being a marine biologist to the global drone mapping leader. She'll be introducing P-UAS methodology, highlighting some of the case studies from her work from across the Caribbean and beyond. Pretty cool, pretty exciting stuff. She's also going to share a little bit about her integrating the technology and science and community into making a sustainable environmental management and some of the information that she has a passion about, which is STEM and sharing and caring in that way. So I am going to segue over to Kim. I'm going to make her spotlight for everyone. Kim, thank you for joining us. I'm super excited because it's been a long time in the works trying to connect us. And so I will make you spotlight for everyone. Welcome and tell us a little bit more about you and your background. I love this.
okay, great. Thank you everybody for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Especially, I think if I even backtrack about how I first found women in, which was around COVID time. And it was so exciting for me as a woman to learn about this organization in the US because at that point I'd been kind of just on my own and I didn't know any other, especially female drone pilots. So I'm just really excited to be here and speak today. So background, I guess, about me. I was born and raised here I'm actually in California at the moment, San Diego, California. Um, Yay, Jim. Which I've heard rumors when I've been places that it's like one of the drone capitals of the US. I don't know if that's true, but it's pretty cool.
We're going with it.
Yeah, I like that claim. So this is where I was born and raised. I went to school at UC Santa Barbara, but after that, I moved to the Caribbean. So that was about 99, 2000. So I am a marine biologist. I went to UCSB by trade, and I lived initially in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And so my passion, what I work on is marine monitoring, coastal marine mapping and monitoring. So I have a really long history in terms of mapping and using aerial images such as, well, back in the day, uh, aerial photos from planes and satellite imagery to map the marine environment. Also, if we backtrack in the Turks and Caicos, I was doing a lot of underwater drone surveys where we'd be running traditional, conventional transects and, monitoring and measuring the corals and trying to create habitat maps underwater of the marine environment. And as I was doing that using just conventional field surveys, is when I really started learning about GIS, geographic information systems, or mapping with 3D software, again, using aerial images and connecting that with the underwater surveys and using that to help map habitats. So we would able to see, if for those of you that don't know GIS, we'd be able to see like an image. You can see here, this is one from St. Lucia in the background, but you can see in the water here, the sand and the darkness. So what is that darkness? So we would ground truth by diving and say, well, that's seagrass, or that's this type of coral reef, or whatever it was. And so that's where I really started getting into GIS. And I think the first thing is I'm a self-taught GIS. I am a GIS lecturer at the University of West Indies for over 15 years. I've taught there. But I think one of the things that I like to impart out there is I was self-taught. I wasn't formally trained. I learned by doing. I learned by fumbling and failing and getting out there on projects and just getting my hands in it and trying to build a geo database the wrong way and learning the right way. And as a scientist, to me, it's all about data and good quality data. Even when it came to drones, to me, it's all about the data. It's not about the photography and the pretty pictures. Yes, you need that to effectively communicate information, but I'm really a data girl in my heart. And where I got into the drone industry was from GIS. So I guess maybe, Desi, I could just lead into how I got into the drone. So I was working, doing environmental mapping and monitoring and field work. And actually at that point, I was teaching GIS and teaching young environmental managers across the Caribbean who were doing their masters in the department I was working for, how to use the GIS. And around 2015 or so, 2014 is when commercial drones were out. At that point, it was the 3D solo drone and the Phantom 2, and people were hooking GoPros on it and flying and capturing data. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. Because in working in the Caribbean, even though I was born and raised here for the last 20 plus years, I am a citizen of Barbados, but I was living in Barbados in the Caribbean, studying in the Caribbean with resources of the Caribbean, which means we had very limited money. We didn't have access to big budgets or to aerial imagery. At that point, I was using Google Earth with my communities. So I was taking these maps, not just doing the underwater habitats, but what my PhD's in and what I specialize in is integrating conventional science with local knowledge. So at that point in time, I was working with communities to map their local knowledge, let's say, of what we're seeing in this picture here. What's the habitats? What's the resources? What are the problems? And working with communities to identify what their local solutions were. Many times in many Caribbean countries, they're split amongst lots of islands, and the government is based, let's say, on the mainland, but there's little islands with maybe a few hundred people. And there's this disconnect in terms of management information. So my specialty is going into a community, we would map it and then integrate the local knowledge about what was happening in that island to come up with environmental solutions. So when these drones came out and I could actually get good quality image, the other issue in the Caribbean was most of the islands were covered under clouds because it was there's mountains, and Google Earth at that point wasn't shooting the marine environment. It was more focused on land. And then in the Caribbean, they do something, if those of you that know GIS and Google Earth, it's called rubber sheeting, where they stretch images. So it was really inaccurate. So when I heard you could buy a $1,500 drone, put it in the air and get pictures, I was like, oh my gosh, this could be really cool. But I wasn't a model aircraft girl. I'd never played video games. I knew nothing about drones. And so around 2015, when the Phantom 3 came out and the drone was, because I'd learned on the 3DR, and still that was really clunky. We were hooking GoPros and you had to have timestamps. It was just kind of intense. So when the Phantom 3 came out, I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And I have two little brothers. Well, they're not little, but younger than me. And one's a photographer, surf photographer, one's a YouTuber. All three of us got drones for Christmas 2015 for all different purposes. Okay. They were gamers. They were into model aircrafts as a kid. And so I got my drone too with them. And the second time I flew, I turned the Phantom 3 off in the air by doing the sticks together. And this is before they had all the fail safes. And it was like 30, 40 feet up, and it just dropped straight out of the sky. And those brothers of mine never let me forget this story, that I shut the drone down. What an idiot. Da 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 da. But luckily I didn't ruin it. I was able to recover it out of the bush. We waited till sunset, saw the flashing lights, and I took it and it was fine. But I think it taught me at that point the importance of understanding, and nobody teaches you how to fly drones safely and how to you do them, without crashing. It's like you kind of had, especially back then, there wasn't YouTube and all these channels that you could just tune into to find out about drones. So I really started researching, drones and the mapping technology, because what I, realized, especially in the Caribbean, there wasn't really anybody else there to fly with or to help me. And so I really went on this mission. And actually that same year that I realized this was going to be a game changer, I was offered my first drone job. And I didn't even know how, for mapping, to set up a drone mapping program, curriculum, and commercial operations policy for the government of Antigua and Barbuda. So I was already training government agencies how to use GIS and do mapping. And I worked a lot with the Nature Conservancy and other international NGOs at that time, and I still do. But they hired me and said, "You're smart, Kim, you'll figure it out. Like, we're going to send you to this guy in the US who's like a drone guy, and he'll give you a 1-day crash course, and then you need to develop the curriculum and put on a training class." And I was like, I don't know, because I knew a lot about photogrammetry at that point. We'd been hiring people to do it with aerial imagery, but it would take them months. It was very difficult. And the fact that supposedly you could just upload it to the cloud and it was super easy, I didn't buy it. So I learned it. I developed this curriculum again with a 3DR. That was the drones they had purchased, and Pix 4D, which at that point was the big hot mapping, but it was really techy, and I was a GIS expert. So I figured this all out and we put on the training, but I realized the concept's there, but this doesn't work in the Caribbean. We don't have the technological skills, the money, the tech. So at that point in time, I really went on, I'm a scientist. I think I've learned another PhD just in drone mapping. I started studying all the drones, all the international policies for commercial operations, all the different mapping softwares, what could work with limited budget, low tech people, because I'm training people that, are environmental field researchers. They're not drone people or GIS people. They're like field data collectors. So I really went on this big effort. Again, being from the Caribbean, being educated there, I was tired of us being 20 years behind the rest of the world also in terms of our policies, our procedures. And I said, if I'm going to develop a drone training program for the Caribbean, I'm going to make sure we are exceeding all international commercial standards. So again, I studied every policy of the world, and we don't have any policies in the Caribbean, and at most countries at this point in time still don't. So I wanted to develop a methodology and operational SOPs that were like meeting international standards, but also was easy to use And the other thing I researched a lot was provided good, accurate quality data. So I spent 5 years testing, flying Pix4D, flying Drone Deploy, flying Maps Made Easy, flying every single mapping program, taking all the data, downloading it, putting it into GIS, testing it, ground truthing it, and seeing, even though it's easier because Pix4D at that time was like drone deploys, not that good. They're not accurate, even though they're easy, and I did my own research because I don't trust these black boxes. So that's sort of where I've come over the years with drones and my experience, but it was a lonely road. I think I'd have to say, especially at the beginning, being a woman, I tried to join several drone model aircraft clubs in the Caribbean, and I was not really that welcomed. People didn't take me seriously because I didn't know how to build model aircrafts, even though I had this extensive background and had done all these research. It was really hard, I think. And so again, coming back to the US, I think during COVID is when it was. I spent a few months here and learning about women in drones and finding out about this organization really was a game changer for me in terms of realizing there are other women out there. There are other organizations that can help provide business advice for me. I've really been passionate about doing the same for all the women that I work with now in the Caribbean.
I see Kim. Woohoo! Yeah. Celebrate.
Actually, I was raising my hand to come down and work with you in the Caribbean. So like if you require some, a professional to come down and work with you, woo, 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 pick me.
Well, I'm going to St. Kitts next week.
Yeah, pick me.
Awesome. Wow. So a lot of information already being put into the chat, and you've already touched on so many things that we all have been there. We have all can relate to crashing your drone, starting. When you talked about starting with your original drones, it just really brings us all back to those beginning steps of our journey. And what hurdles did you overcome? Because you're such a success now, I know you've had a lot of hurdles, and share maybe a little bit of those hurdles.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about, the one was with just being a woman. I think
Yeah.
that was actually way bigger than I realized until later. Was really that, even in San Diego back in the day, 2017, going to like drone meetup groups and being the only woman and not really having anybody and I wasn't that good. Again, I think the hurdle was that I was self-taught. So and this is what I have my students, because I teach. I mean, that's primarily what I do in the drone industry now. I'm a drone instructor, putting on and setting up commercial operations and teams and stuff. But was really what I have my students do is just getting out and flying every single day. I used to pop off one battery every single morning before I started work. It's just getting the stick time in. And I think that's probably the best point of advice that I give to my students is it's like you drive a car. You don't just go practice and go to the learning school to learn how to drive and think you're a good driver. You've got to put the hours in. So I think that just getting the confidence up to fly, and that was a big hurdle, I think, for me. The other is, I think, learning how to maneuver drone operations. I mean, I came back in 2016, I think is when I got my Part 107. Again, not having any context in the Caribbean, no policy, no other, I had to figure it out for myself. Like we didn't have anything out there at that point. So it's like coming back here, learning the commercial operations here. And then now I have a drone commercial licenses in 15 Caribbean countries. So learning, I think, policies, procedures within the different countries, making friends and getting to know all the civil aviation authorities, that's been a hurdle. It gets easier now because they see my experience. But I think at the beginning, it was kind of like, they don't know what you're doing, why you want to know about the policies. Are you here to investigate them, or are you there to be friends? Because I think a lot of people are, especially in the drone space, in the commercial aviation world, if they don't have the policies in place, they feel ashamed. And that's what I try to explain to all my Caribbean countries is, you know, I have a lot of lectures about policies, how these policies began, and what countries did to fill that gap until they implemented policies, you know, by finding pre-existing legislations. So I think that was another hurdle. I don't know if there's any other specific questions.
So you had also mentioned about the safety and the protocols that you implemented. I know in the beginning, it really was challenging finding this type of information, and we're starting to see a lot more of that safety, not only being relevant, but actual protocols are being addressed and they are mandatory in some situations. And so you starting out so early developed your own training systems and your own safety management systems. Can you share a little bit with us about some of those systems that you put into place?
Yeah, I mean, like right now, one of the classes I'm putting on, it's my largest class, but we start with commercial operations and the safety procedures. And really, it's based on international best practices. But again, I'm a data person, so I've integrated a lot about data handling, data management. I think that's one thing in all drone worlds, whether you're a photographer or not, people don't focus on is the data that comes with it and handling and managing and organizing that data. And if you don't, like to me, there's no point in us out there capturing all this if we're not handling and managing that data correctly. And also data in terms of flight logs, reporting, you know, having an incident and what you do and how you do it, even if your country doesn't require it, but having the flight logs, you know, knowing how to access and download flight logs, the safety, the checklists, and not skipping. I mean, that's what something I always tell my drone teams. Whenever I skip my own steps, that's when something bad happens. You know, I'm in a rush and I skip the firmware or, you know, whatever, and you go, and then there's an issue. And so it's really just making sure that you follow them and you follow the procedures, you know, meticulously. And I can say I've never crashed a drone. I've never lost any of them. I have all my drones, all like 10 or 12 of them I've owned right now that still function because, and I can't say the accidents and incidents don't ever happen, but if you follow all the procedures very carefully and you do your feasibility and your safety assessments and you don't take risks and you don't, you know, drone flying isn't that bad. It's not that scary. I think people get really worried when they first start that there's going to be, and you hear of all these, I call them jokers out there. Oh, I got my first drone, and you know, they tell you, oh, I was on a boat and I took it off, and I'm like, wait a minute, you were flying off a boat and you've never flown a drone before. Like that's one of my high risk situations for, as people on this call probably know, for so many reasons. And then they wonder why they lost the drone the first day off a boat. I just want to like slap them one, you know? So I think just a proper training is really, really essential and again, building that trust. In these small islands, the civil aviations know who my commercial operators are. They know they've been trained by me, you know? So keeping their reputation, once you burn your reputation, it's all over. You can't earn that back. So I really try to enforce that to my teams as well, that they want to hold their head proud and they need to make me proud because all these countries know me and know that I train them. So if they cut corners and they don't do things right, you know, it just makes me look like a joker. So I'm very strict, as they say. My students say I'm very forthcoming. I forget the word they always use for me. Straightforward.
Brutalizer.
Yeah. I used to call it drone training, and now they call it
That's
drone.
my nickname. So I figured, you know, I'm a Kim.
No, they call it boot camp.
Brutalizer.
Yeah, boot camp. I'm a drill sergeant, they say.
So I would like to circle back to being a woman in the industry and getting started. And, you know, there's been a lot of comments into our chat actually about it and the hurdles that we've all overcome and the challenges and such. And can you speak a little bit more about maybe some of the positive aspects of what you've seen? Because we have been in the industry for quite a while and there has been some very positive changes.
Yeah, there's lots of positive changes. I think I'm glad that we switched it because I don't think it's all bad news. I Definitely things have gotten much easier, much more accepting. I don't know if it's because I've gotten more experience and I have more confidence now, why I feel much more accepted in the industry. I have, all types. I haven't felt that pressure in a few years at all. And again, I don't know if it's a woman thing or an experience thing or confidence thing, but the other thing that I found out actually from talking to Sharon was when I look back at my training cohort. So I've trained over 2,000 people across the Caribbean how to, operate and do drone mapping. But more than 50% of the people I've trained are women pilots, which is really exciting. So I have a really strong women cohort of pilots all across the Caribbean. And I find personally, my women pilots usually are a little more organized in terms of the data and the preparation and the logistics sometimes. And always I joke that whoever and it's usually because I'll train like a group of like, 8 pilots at a time. And it's always like the quiet person that's not like a little shy that is like kills it at the drone mapping or kills it at drone flying. And I find out after they're like a gamer or something. And I'm like, yeah. But I think too, the technology's just gotten much easier too, which has made everything, I think, easier, less stressful. Yeah, I think that it's definitely, I don't know how other people's takes are here, but I think it's gotten much easier in the last 3, 4 years,
I-
actually, since COVID.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um,
Anyway,
and like you said, the technology has changed quite a bit. And so tell us a little bit about some of your experiences with the variety of technology and the mapping solutions that you have obviously taken a deep dive into. Share with us a little bit about some of those mapping solutions that you've found.
yeah, I think what sort of sets me apart maybe from other people doing drone mapping is my focus on environmental mapping. So really that is my specialty. I'd say that's my niche with drone mapping. It's not just how to do mapping, it's really for environmental management. So I mentioned my background initially is coastal marine mapping. My master's, my PhD's in environmental management broadly. And in the Caribbean, that includes terrestrial. We basically consider it ridge to reef approach, because small islands, everything on land spills out to the sea. So mapping the environment has always been sort of this foundation of the types of training that I've done, but it was initially more focused for coastal marine environments. Now, since COVID, I've expanded into agriculture, food security, climate risk, and community resilience mapping as well. But what sets me apart too, and this stems actually to my PhD. This is way before drones. Again, drones just became a new tool in my box. But I have 20 years experience doing something called participatory GIS or this participatory approach. So it's using all the conventional science that's out there, but also integrating local knowledge of what's happening on the ground so that we have more a comprehensive understanding of social, economic information and scientific information so that we can come up with more effective environmental solutions, as well as more community driven, bottom up rather than top down management initiatives. So I use drone mapping and monitoring to engage people, community members as well. It's not just collecting the data. We go back with the drone maps and we sit down with communities. We sit down with fishers, farmers, people working or people, maybe the beach vendors on the beach, and we annotate with the maps their local knowledge. And so again, this participatory mapping is what my PhD was in. And we did that. I've done it in multiple islands focused on marine spatial planning and the inclusion of different types of information into the drone maps. So that's what I specialize really now. And it's not just coastal marine. The approach that I've come up with over the years, I've trained, as I mentioned, probably oh gosh, I don't know, over 2,000 people, about 15 different large scale projects in the Caribbean for countries or ministries or regional projects. This picture here in the back is from Sargassum seaweed management. You could see like the tractor there doing that. So a whole range of different problems, let's say, for the environment. But I've developed an approach or a methodology now that can be applied to any environmental problem. So for example, right now that Kim Players, the St. Kitts and Nevis team that I'm training, that is with the United Nations FAO. And so the focus or the industry that we're looking at is agricultural disaster risk management. But the approach I'm teaching them can be used for coastal marine management. It can be used for all different types. So I'm teaching them critical thinking and how to take this ecosystem approach to mapping to integrate. So they're not like my teams. I just got off a call with them. They're planning their missions for tomorrow. We're looking at actually a disaster risk, a community flooding vulnerability site. So they're going out and they're planning the mission, the ecosystem of the area, but also all the different audiences and stakeholders. So they're not just creating a drone map. They're probably also going to take some photos and videos for social media, education, outreach. They'll probably do lower level panoramas to have good informed discussions with people that might not be into the drone maps. And so it's really teaching them how to create a whole variety of information sets to effectively communicate. So it's not about just the data. It's also a big part of my training, like this module or this program they're doing. The first module was commercial operations. The second module is participatory mapping and monitoring. The third module is, or mapping and monitoring for agriculture. The third module is participatory mapping and geospatial analysis. And then the fourth is information sharing and communication. So the final project they will do for this class is not just present the site, but also be able to communicate it to various audiences, creating a public TV PSA, a video. Then they have to present the data to, the decision makers. And then they might have to have a community meeting with the farmers and sit down with the drone maps and annotate the data and create summary reports. And, so at this training, we're using Drone Deploy. It depends on the client, which mapping program I use. It also depends which one I recommend on what your capacity is, your budget, how many people. So there is, I think, for drone mapping, no one size fits all approach. But what I teach people is that thought process and then how to get help. My other big goal, I've got these team for 3 months straight. But when I'm done, I don't want to hear from them every day. I will always support my kids, I always say. But what I'm trying to teach them is to build the networks, to know other drone pilots, to get friends with civil aviation, to know how to get help with DJI support, how to file claims, how to look on blogs, how to connect like with Women in Drones, so that they have this network when I'm done with them, not just me. And we have our Caribbean network. So I have my alumni groups. And so we still keep in contact, and we use Slack to, stay in touch and keep in contact. So I think that's kind of in a nutshell. Probably I gave you more information, Desi, than you wanted. You guys can tell I really love
We
talking.
love it. We love it. Yes. And I bet you'd have a lot of people signing up for the program because it just sounds so in depth and deep dive into it. So we do have a couple questions that popped up into our chat. Do you see changes in the U.S. policy impacting the type of work you're doing?
I'm kind of happy that I'm not in the US with the type of because most of my clients were using DJI drones, and we know right now what's going on in the US in the drone world. So that's a little interesting. I know that it can have impacts on what I'm doing. I'm happy in terms of like the having remote ID and more accountability. I think for drone pilots, I think that really is something that's always kind of burned me because I follow all the rules religiously. Again, because my background working at universities and big agencies, it's all about protocol and we don't want to look bad. But then there's so many people that have ruined it out there for other drone pilots because, as I say, they're jokers. They're doing things that really is not appropriate. But yeah, I can't speak a lot because most of my work is, even though I'm from the United States, I'm not really, I have a commercial license here. I'm not operating much in the United States as a commercial pilot. I I'm mostly working. I've done a few projects here in California with permaculture farms and local nonprofits here in San Diego, but most of my work is the Caribbean. So I'm not as following and up on the news. And I'm kind of, no offense, happy that this is a working place because it's getting a lot more complex here.
Yes, yes, it is. So back also to the software and the mapping solutions that you're doing, you did specify that, every job is different and you choose your mapping software based on that. But there's been a couple of questions about what would be more of your go-to, a couple comments about, drone deploy versus the Pix4D, simplicity and accuracy. Do you have a little bit more follow-up on that?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna hands down say that I love drone deploy.
There you go.
Yeah,
Look at Jim Bonnerdale's like, yes.
I'm gonna bring it
He
back.
was waiting for that answer.
I'm gonna bring it back to 2016 and meeting Pix4D and the reaction that I got from Pix4D and the reaction that I got when I first met the owners of Drone Deploy in late 2016. And Drone Deploy has always supported me, encouraged me, gone above and beyond. I work with them for Drones for Good partner. They give all of my teams, my nonprofits, very good discounts. They are very generous in terms of, providing support and offering help, technical assistance for my teams. That's my go-to for the Caribbean for the most part, when we can, the organizations can afford it. Their tech support is amazing. I can't speak as much for Pix4D in recent times because I haven't worked with them much recently. But I am a huge fan of Drone Deploy. The price point, though, is prohibitive for a lot of new pilots, which is why, again, someone else that I absolutely love is based here in San Diego, which is Drones Made Easy and Maps Made Easy. So for a new pilot just getting started, that's where I put all my, and I train organizations that, let's say, look at this, it's the Ministry of Agriculture in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, my individual pilots there might want to go out, and I'm training all of them to be commercial pilots as like a side hustle as well, right? They're doing it for work, but there's always extra money that could be made on the side. So again, anyone new that I'm telling, I say start with Pix4D, or not Pix4D, sorry, Maps Made Easy, and use it. And you can buy it. It's like a pay-as-you-go program if you want to do more. Yes, it's a little harder technically to use. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles in terms of the analysis. But again, what is your end use? So some of my nonprofits, that's all we do is Maps Made Easy. And that's where they end because that's all they can afford. And they're not mapping every day. They're mapping, once every few months, a certain site or a certain project. Again, Pix4D, all of these agencies have, especially if you're a nonprofit or educational, they have a lot of great discounts. And so again, it's really, and same with the drones. It's like, I hate it. My pet peeve, here's a drone pet peeve, is when I come into a country and they have a matrice and the country has spent $25,000, $30,000 in a drone and they don't even know how to fly a drone. It's like buying a Lamborghini and you don't even have a license, and it just pisses me off. I just think what a waste. New drone pilots, right now my pilots are out there with Air 2Ss. All right. And when they get good, after they go out and they crack it out there, or it was phantoms in the day, then United Nations and I will come back a year later after they've, been mapping up 20,000 acres out there. And then we'll go out and we'll buy them the Mavic 3 multispectral and we move your way up. But you need to understand, I think that's where people get all carried away. They want all the fancy tech. No, start simple. Learn what the drones can do for you. Understand your industry and the application, and then you move your way up. But you don't start with the big guns. I mean, yeah, if you have all the money in the world, but who does? You need to, and then you can't even, again, I think these governments, these agencies, and it's my nonprofits too, they don't know anything about drones when these salespeople come in and sell them hard. And so buy something small, and so that you learn more about the industry and you can have an educated conversation with these salespeople and understand the ROI on this, because it doesn't make sense. You'll burn yourself if you're an agency. You buy some expensive drone and you can't prove the ROI the first year. you know. So start, and same with the dream. Everybody wants to spray and do all these massive things. And I'm like, whoa, let's start with simple case studies, simple pilot project, get it right, work through it, use an adaptive management approach, learn from our lessons, and then slowly scale up. But you need to prove to your organization, to your boss, to your agency, the value of the drones, because they just think that they're going to get some pictures and they don't understand all the data, all the information, as well as all the work and the storage and the software and the sharing and all the other things that come with this. I mean, it's a big, as you all, I think most people here probably understand, it's a big thing. There's a lot that goes on here, and to do it right, you just start small. That's what I always encourage my team. Start small, learn right, and build a solid foundation before you try to like go for the dream.
I am so glad to hear that, because so often you see that they just go out and get this massive drone and yet they don't know how to fly it. And it's not really the right drone for the job.
Oh yeah.
So it's great to hear that. You
Amount
know?
of these fires that I see out there that were bought for agriculture. And I'm like, oh, you have a photography drone. Cool.
There you go.
Good on you. Like, what a waste. We could have bought two Air 2Ss fully kitted for that. Like you could have learned and not been scared. But yeah, it's really a shame. You know, I think people take advantage. I guess that's the background. I'm not a salesperson of the sales industry. I'm like, wow, these guys are good. Because if I could sell half as good as them, you know, what we could do with the money that they spent on that. I mean, because it's so
Well,
hard to
they're speaking to
invest in
uneducated
training.
people, so it's an easier sell. They're speaking to uneducated people that want to believe in the dream. They're selling the dream, right? So they're putting the cart before the horse.
Yep.
I've been in sales forever, and it's like, you especially like organizations, like you're saying, is like going for the big guns first, and then like you said, everybody's afraid. Nobody, how many people I've had companies call me and they're like, yeah, I'm having a hard time getting people to volunteer to be the drone pilot. I'm like, that's just insane. They're sending them to school, but they're afraid to be the person to crash the drone. And $1,500 is a lot of money to people, right? Like the Air 2 or the Air 3, that's a lot. But then you put something in this monstrous drone, even if it wasn't 25 grand, it's still intimidating. So love that you're speaking about that, Kim, because it's not talked about a lot.
Right.
And so then, what happens is that, a lot of us that are out there doing the sales or, working with clients, it's hard it can be kind of challenging to kind of get them to sit back and say what, like you're saying, what the priority is, so I love it.
Yeah, so really like my participatory UAS approach is what I call it now. So step one is understanding your application. Clearly sitting down before the drones and identifying who are your end users, what is the data, what is your specific application? Is it disaster risk? Is it agriculture? Is it, reef mapping? Is it sea turtles? Is it looking at nursery grounds for sharks? Whatever it is. And then we back in to the rest of it next. We figure out the drones. That's why people say, oh, well, what drone? I say, whoa, we have to have a console and I need to understand all of these things before I can make an educated response. And so really, again, this is the approach that I'm trying to train my teams to take. And so I have a drone mapping guidebook. And so step one is understanding the application, the purpose, and then the hardware, then the software, then, and also the data comes next, actually, before even the hardware or software. What data do you need? What scale, what resolution, and where that dream is too, Kim, what's the dream? So that we can slowly, incrementally build the skills and build our technical capacity and the equipment to get to that dream. So I think starting small and moving incrementally is really important.
And knowing the end, what is the data that you're needing? What kind of information are you trying to gather to know what tool do you need? We did have a question come in from LinkedIn wondering about what kind of drone mapping software are you familiar with for drone delivery in urban city settings?
Well, drone mapping software for that, I don't know. I'm not doing drone delivery in urban cities. Um, so I don't think I can answer that question. Sorry.
So, just as a follow-up to that, if you do have any comments or questions on LinkedIn or some of the other social media platforms, we'll try to get to those. Feel free to put those questions into the chat as well. And then if we don't get to it, we'll try to reach out afterwards and do a follow-up for you. I did put some information into our chat as far as how to reach out to Kim. Um, Kim, while I know we're kind of going to be running out of time here really quick, but I would love for you to share maybe your most exciting use case story that you have. Oh, I would love it.
Actually, because I was just talking to my team about disaster management. So I was, this was a great one. I was putting on a drone training in the country of Anguilla in the Caribbean, beautiful island, and it was for disaster management. And we finished on Friday evening. It was just a 1 week. So I have different scales of class. So this was just a 1 week intro to flying and mapping, like a boot camp. So we finished Friday, and Friday night, a hurricane hit. So the team, all the power was down. Like, Anguilla is a very small island. It has one dirt road that loops around, like really small island. Power's out, a hurricane hits. And so actually we had mapped a coastal community called Sandy Ground. It's a low-lying coastal community known for flooding and it was in the high disaster risk zone, which is why we mapped it that week. We mapped the whole ecosystem. We also did some lower level corridor plans over the community, and I was explaining to them, it's really important to have pre and post disaster and whatever. And so of course we get on WhatsApp. I hear from my group in the morning, and there's WhatsApp videos of landslides, which is what was problem in this area down these cliffs into the community. And so there was all this. And so we didn't know where they were. Again, nobody had gotten out there. So, but it was also in a red zone. A DJI red zone is right at the end of the runway. And so I was telling the government agencies, you need to get these permanently unlocked by DJI. We had gone through the steps that week, but you have to get the letter from the air traffic control and all that. So we obviously had not done that. So I was called by the team. They're like, come down to HQ. And like, I had to go to headquarters for disaster management. And it actually took us like 3 hours to get the drones unlocked, which was a bummer. But then we were actually able to go out on the ground with the police. And we had these WhatsApp videos, and we went and we ran very quickly corridor plans along the cliffs to identify and pinpoint where the landslides were. Then we went back and did 3D maps down the landslides. And then not only were we able to use it nationally, we shared that data in real time the same day to SEDEMA, which is the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency. So they had professional surveyors and people that could look at the damages and assess, the needs that needed to be brought into the country to assist with this disaster. And that was really, and actually somewhere else, I was in another country just the other day, and we finished, and a hurricane hit that weekend too. But it wasn't that bad. But I keep saying, whenever I train disaster management and I'm in a country, like, the hurricane comes. But that probably was one of the most recent exciting things, Desi. That was about a year ago, was having the disaster happen. Literally the night training ended, and then I was supposed to stay in the island for 4 days for fun, to dive and hang out. No, I spent it disaster mapping, living at HQ with the team and the police and the fire department. But it was really great. And I just heard from them. They, just a couple days ago, actually, they were saying that, were giving me a shout out to do this Women in Drones. They saw the post, was that, they have set up commercial, and actually they got all the drones unlocked from DJI, and they've really taken the commercial operations to the next level in the country of Anguilla. And I was really happy to hear that.
That is fantastic. What a perfect use case. Too bad you can't just broadcast that out to everywhere, because it is that before and after is just exactly what people need to know about, and how to mitigate it, and how to move forward and make the changes, the positive changes. Wow.
The same thing just happened in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Hurricane Beryl. My team, I had just finished training them like 6 months earlier. And then the team went out 2 days after to one of the remote islands. No power, no electricity, power lines down. They said it was really intense, the electromagnetic interference and everything. And they were able to successfully map, it's a very small island, successfully map the island in one day with their four Phantom 4s. And they went out there and they cracked it. And I was so proud of them. And, all the glitches, being offline, not having internet, like everything, and being in a red zone. So they had to pre-unlock it. And, they had to climb up on a building to catch somebody's Starlink just to get it to unlock last minute. But they did it. And so that's, I think, what makes me really happy is I'm constantly hearing from my teams and these successes that they're getting, and hearing them progress their way up is really exciting.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it makes me a happy teacher.
Oh, I bet. I bet. So I know we are kind of running out of time here. There was one other question that was brought up by Audrey that addressed how important is using the RTK module in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, RTK is really important, depending on, again, your application. So as I tell them, for environmental management, the good news is about 95% of environmental management applications do not need RTK. All right. And so it's the difference between map accuracy with the features within your map and global or relative accuracy of where that map's placed. And so that's a big part because GIS is my background. So really explaining data accuracy, data quality. And so when do you need that centimeter level accuracy? So yeah, spraying, that's one of those needs, right? You need to know if you fly it first, let's say with the M3M, and you find out where the problems are, and then you would put the sprayer drone so that it turns exactly on and off. If you're a few centimeters off, you miss the plant. Or also for when I'm working with environmental like engineers. And so we're going to be building a breakwater, or we're looking at erosion on a beach, changes over time. So when you're looking at changes over time, you want to compare one map from one day to the next day to the next day. And especially if there's centimeter level changes, you need to have an RTK module. Other than that, reefs don't move. All right. The reef is going to stay the reef. The health of the reef, you can't determine with the drone anyhow. All right. You have to dive. And so I think the other big point that I teach, and what's different, with me, I'm not just teaching drone mapping. It's almost always you need to do a field survey with environmental mapping and correlate that data to the drone map. So like I said, you can see in this picture here that there's sargassum on the beach, and you might be able to identify where is sargassum and where is not. But to know the volume requires a field survey, or to know the health of the reef requires ground truthing, or same with the fields of the crops. A lot of agricultural, it can give us certain indicators, but you need to get on boots on the ground to find out what pest is actually killing the field. The drone's not going to, it's going to show you where the dead spots are. It's going to identify the problems, but drones don't replace people. We still need to integrate environmental mapping with boots on the ground field surveys. And so that is another part of what I'm teaching, depending on the industry, is what are those field surveys? Because you don't just take the data. It doesn't just spit out of the drone and give you all the answers. It still requires science to be integrated with it. So like I said, it's just a tool in part of the big picture.
And we have heard that so many times, but it is so true. Very true words. Your work is so rewarding, and it just moves everything forward and vital for the environment. It's very exciting. And I can imagine being an instructor in the field, how exciting that must be for you, and seeing your students moving on. So just to wrap things up, because I know we are out of time, I did put your contact information into our chat. So
Great.
if somebody wanted to reach out, and I saw that you would put your email in there as well. But do you have any final words that you'd like to share with everyone as far as wrapping it up?
I think something I'm really excited to share to this group, which I have not shared yet, is since COVID, I have been teaching blended. I had to build for the United Nations because I wasn't allowed to travel at online training academy. And so that right now is a blended, I teach part-time in person and then we coach and I have online lessons, but I'm launching it 100% virtually within the next 2 months. So I have environmental practitioners from all around the world that are constant, especially on LinkedIn, always messaging me. They want to learn more about drone mapping for environmental monitoring and this approach that I've talked about today. I am confident to say, after many years of iterations, many cohorts using it, it is going to be ready for fully virtual launch. And I will be releasing it in Q2. So probably right after Easter or so, it should be ready. I've got all the modules filmed. I'm just kind of cleaning it and making it so that it can be a fully virtual. So this would not be somebody that's like learn to fly. I mean, I could do that, but really it's more people that know how to fly that really want to know more about environmental mapping and monitoring. Commercial operations also will be covered in it. So there'll be different modules. You could either buy the whole thing or just buy certain parts of it, of course. But I'm really, really, really excited to launch this globally to the entire world because I know that this approach can be easily scaled anywhere. If I can do it regionally, I've put on cohorts across 9 countries simultaneously coaching them, people that know how to fly. I'm very excited to announce this. So people either want to follow me on LinkedIn, it's Dr. Kim Baldwin. Also, I think about it, Instagram, drones or bust, like Vegas or bust, busted up, drones or bust is my Insta handle, or email me or just look me up, Kim Baldwin, Barbados, Kim Baldwin, marine biologist, Dr. Baldwin, I don't know. Or reach out. I would love to keep in touch. I think another thing, Desi, I want to talk to you guys more about a whole bunch of women. I would love to start a chapter of drones, women in drones Caribbean. I've been rounding my women up. They are ready to go. They just want to get more involved and networked. And I think they feel very isolated in the Caribbean. It's like just us. So every woman that I've trained is like, absolutely, I would join. So let's make that happen between me, you, Sharon. Like, I want to find out more about that. That would be something I'd really love to be a part of.
Awesome. You heard it here. Okay. That ball
Promise
is
it.
rolling.
I'm making the commitment here.
Here we are. There you go.
Let's do it, Kim.
Hey, wait, I think we need to go there and see in person. Right?
If you're invited, just let me know.
Road trip, road trip.
See one in our horizon.
My next
I
country is
love it.
Dominica after this. So
I love it.
yeah.
Awesome. I did, once again, I put all your contact information into our chat. A lot of congratulations. Way to go. Awesome. A couple of where can we sign up?
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's gonna sign up. I mean, I kind of think so. I hope so. I've spent a lot of work on this, but I really, really am excited to launch this next chapter and scale a little wider my net.
Awesome. Awesome. So if we just follow you, say on LinkedIn and such like that, we'll get more information.
Yeah. I mean, or people could just email me and I can put them on an email list or something, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever. People just reach out to me. Like I said, either LinkedIn, whatever, and I can make sure that I put you into my little email because I have my student email list. So I'll just add you to my mailing list. Not that I mail out that much, but when I launch this, I'll be mailing out something.
Put out a big blast. So I'm going to put your email into our chat as well. So everybody, do you want to make sure that you save the chat? There's 3 dots on there. The first option is to save the chat because there has been a lot of great contact information put into it.
Okay.
With that, we will wrap it up because we are at the top of the hour. Kim, thank you so much. We're so excited about all your, yes, Jim, I agree. We're excited about all the things happening in your future. We love what you've been doing and all the pathways that you are paving. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time today too. And I want to thank everyone for being here on Tuesday. Look forward to seeing you next week. Well, I won't be here, but Jim and Sheila will be handling the show. And so we'll see you next week. All right.
Thanks, Kim.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks everybody for joining.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. Wonderful. True inspiration and knowledge.
Thanks, Kim. Keep in
Appreciate it.
touch.
Yeah, I will.